Welcome back to another episode
Welcome back
of the Wild Way
podcast.
Let's go. Yeah, we want to inspire every man to live with eternal purpose every day. And we are super excited to have our awesome guest, Dr. Gabe Bouch, Pastor Gabe,
only.
PG, the one and only. And a lot of us, and maybe some of you will know him, know his face, that you've heard him speak before at Freedom Church. And man, we are just super excited to interview him and hear his story. You know, when we started this, Charles, Pastor Gabe was one of the first people I thought of. Like, man, we have got to hear this guy's story and see what God has done in his life and how this eternal purpose is guiding you through everything that you're doing. And so, man, I couldn't be more excited about today.
Yes.
So happy to be with you guys.
Thank you. Okay, before we started, I literally just said I have a burning question that I want to ask you. I'm going to ask it right now. All right. Do you like when people call you Pastor Gabe or PG? What is your preference?
Preferred title, Dr.
What is your
Bouch?
preferred title for people who don't know you? Like, I just call you
question.
PG.
You know, I'm going to be honest. It was awkward at 1st, you know, because you're just used to being called by your name growing up. And so I always prefer Gabe, but I appreciate that people are wanting to, in some sense, love me by showing me respect. So I've gotten used to it.
So Dr. Bouch it is.
But your preference is Gabe.
Gabe is what I prefer.
Okay, so I'll stick with PG.
Yeah. It could be the angel Gabriel. It's just so many nicknames.
It's so
A lot of
many.
options.
What was the nickname you had growing up then?
You know what? Funny enough, I was actually more of a nickname giver.
I
than a
resonate with that.
nickname receiver.
Okay.
And so I gave a lot of nicknames over the years. And
What's your nickname for Billy?
yeah, I mean, Billy B is just my
It's too easy.
go-to,
Billy B.
right? You know, it just flows off the tongue so nicely.
Yeah.
BB.
BB.
All right, so we're just going to jump right in. We have a bunch of questions to ask you, but first we want to start at the beginning. So just tell us a little bit about your background. Like, what was it like in your house growing up? Who is Gabriel Bouch before the doctor, before the pastor? Who were you?
Yeah. You know, I was really fortunate to grow up in a really great home. And it's actually one of the things that made me want to be married and be a dad is because my experience was so positive growing up. So I grew up in Florida. One of the pluses of that is you could play outside all the time.
All year round.
So that's what we did. You know, it was riding bikes, it was playing basketball, playing football, playing wiffle ball, swimming in the lake. I didn't really consider myself an academic person growing up. I mean, I did well in school, but I just wanted to play outside with my friends, you know, play some video games sometimes, like a regular guy. Got a chance to do a lot of stuff with my dad, you know, so from an early age, we were wrestling. We would have boxing matches by rolling up pillows and just all kinds of stuff. So a lot of playing, just wanted to have fun, hated homework.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So if we met you in 10th grade, where would you fit? Are you like the jock? Are you evolving into the math guy that you become? Or who is Gabe back then?
Wow, yeah, good question. Definitely had the nerd piece in there
Okay.
by that point. But was playing sports too, you know, so I played on the football team and
Starting lineman.
yeah, offensive lineman for sure. Actually, what's funny is my dad was the offensive line coach at my high school. And so I clearly was never going to be an offensive lineman.
Yeah.
And so quarterback, receiver, anything where you could be, you know, small and thin worked for me. So I played football and golf, kind of opposites of each other. And yeah, you know, a lot of insecurities, like a lot of people still that age, you know, wanted girls to like me, wanted to be cool, was doing well in my classes, but, you know, kind of regular guy in that sense. Although when both of your parents teach at your high school, that's going to affect things a little bit, right?
Yeah.
You're never going to be quite
Yourself.
the normal, regular person, but that was a positive experience.
Was that nerve-wracking? Have both of your parents working at your school?
You know what? It wasn't actually. You know, my parents were really good teachers, and I was a good student, and they were teachers in my best subject.
Wait, they actually taught classes that you were in?
Yes,
Oh,
I had
wow.
both of my parents in high school.
That'd be
And
fun.
Wow.
so actually the big trick with that was figuring out what I was going to actually call my mom. Like the first day of school, you know, are you Mrs. Bouch? Who are you? And somehow I landed on M. So I called my mom M.
Like
So-
James Bond?
Yeah, kind of like that
Yeah,
actually. And what was funny is the rest of the class ended up adopting that as well.
perfect.
So yeah,
Wait,
our
where did
class.
M come from? How did you
I
decide on
think
M?
I couldn't decide between mom and Mrs. Bouch.
Mm.
I
Common
couldn't get past the
denominator.
first letter, right?
Yeah.
After that, they diverged, but
Yeah.
we'll just stick with where they're the same, and that worked out.
Can agree on him.
Yeah, exactly.
What about your dad? What was he, D?
Yeah, and by that time, I had my dad my sophomore year, and there was, there's no more hiding that, yeah, these are my parents, and so
Yeah.
it was just dad after
Okay.
that. And but we did have fun with him. Like, yeah, we would play some jokes on the rest of the class occasionally.
Yeah.
So like if my dad was giving the test papers back, we'd say things like, "Well, son, you missed one on the test this week. You know what that means? No supper for you." And
Yeah.
the rest of the class wasn't totally sure whether that was true or false, but we had fun with it.
Nice.
And he was my golf coach too. So
Perfect.
Wow.
yeah, worked out. Family affair.
Nice. So siblings, younger, older?
Good question. Yeah, I have one sister who is 10 years younger. So I felt like I was an only child for a long time.
Mhm.
And because there's such an age difference, I think I always just saw myself as like the third parent, you know?
Mhm.
And so what's interesting is I'm closer to my sister now because that difference is so big. I left the house, I was 18, she was 8.
Mhm.
So we didn't have necessarily, it wasn't a peer level relationship yet. Um, but have a great sister, lives in North Carolina. And yeah, but it was kind of like an only child experience for a long time.
Yeah. Cool. So you end up going to college. What did you study there?
Yeah, math and physics for
Come
me.
on, math and physics.
Yeah, it was funny when I wasn't sure exactly what I was going to study when I got there. I knew it'd be something in the math and sciences, so I thought maybe engineering.
Mhm.
But then I realized very quickly I can't really build anything or do anything practical. I'm way better at just thinking, and you don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
So math and physics work better.
Well, a lot of people that know engineers would say they're probably good for nothing practical either. So just
I
depends on the eye of the
can't
beholder.
comment on that.
Cool. So math and physics. So what really inspired you? What did you want to do with that? You see like a lot of people they go into college, they're like, okay, I like this. Were you discovering your kind of purpose along those lines yet?
Great question. Yeah, it was very much. College years were really significant for me.
Mhm.
A lot of major things happened during those years, and a lot of identity related things, a
Mhm.
lot of figuring out what I was going to do with my life. I met my wife in college.
Mm.
So basically, every big decision you can make in life happened during
In
those
college.
4 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, when I started, it was just, hey, I'm good at these topics, these subjects, they interest me, so I'm going
Mhm.
to dive in. I had some experience over some summers doing some research in mathematics, and I honestly ended up with some mixed feelings about that because there was still a sense of like, I want to lead, I want to make an impact, and math and physics can sometimes be so abstract
Mhm.
that I started to have this sense of, I don't know if just this alone is going to be it because it can start to be so disconnected from reality in
Mhm.
some, the way at least a lot of people approach math and physics. And so I began to wonder a little bit about that. Which direction is my life going to go? How are things going to turn out? So, yeah, when I started out, I didn't know for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, so you end up not using your math degree immediately. So what talk us through, like as you're going through college, some of those significant moments where your life changed, where you began to discover your purpose and find, why you're here on this planet, how those two streams of you intersect.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it's impossible for me to answer this question without talking about God
Mm-hmm.
because that was the big shift for me.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mentioned already or alluded to at least, I had a pretty good relationship with my parents. And my dad was truly a friend at that point. And so we would have conversations about everything. And I grew up in a religious home. I'm very thankful for that. But when I got to college, I didn't honestly really know what I believed
Mm-hmm.
about big questions. And it was the summer after my freshman year when these questions came to a head for me. I think, people talk about, just in this place of being intellectually not at rest. And I just was not at rest with, okay, what's true? What's real? Is there a God or is there not a God? And so those questions were swirling around inside of me. And I can remember having conversations with my dad. And my dad just asked very point blank, well, if you died today, do you know what would become of your life after that?
Mhm.
And I said, no, Dad, I don't know. And this really was a key sort of catalytic moment that put me along a path where I realized I've got to get some clarity on this.
Mhm.
And you would think for me that that would have all begun with getting intellectual answers, but actually it didn't for me. It began with praying. And so, summer after my freshman year, I didn't really know how to pray, but I began to just have honest cries to God. God, I need you. I need you to come change my life. And the surprise was that he did. I
Mhm.
was a skeptic. I wasn't one of these people who felt like he was always hearing things and sensing things spiritually. That was not me. And so when my life really started to shift, it actually caught me by surprise.
Mm.
And but when that happened, that began sort of a domino effect of many other things in my life, and specifically how I ended up doing something besides math and physics, though it was connected.
Mhm.
And if you want to tell you that story, I can.
Yeah, we would love to
Yes.
hear
What
that.
was that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So as a math major, I was required to take an introductory computer programming class. People always think, oh, you're a math major, you're probably really good with computers. I wasn't.
Mhm.
Again, maybe that was too practical. And
Real objects. What are these?
yeah, exactly. I just want to think. Um, so in this class, we were going over a homework problem, and it was looking at basically a few lines of computer code. And the question was, what's going to be the output? And the professor gave the answer, and I remember thinking, no, that's not right. And so I raised my hand and I said, no, I don't think it's going to be that. I think it's going to be this. And he said, no, 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 it's not going to be that. It's going to be this. And this was one of these moments where I knew, no, I'm right on this.
Yeah.
He's just not seeing it correctly. So we went back and forth a little bit. And finally, the professor said, oh, yeah, you're right. I don't know what I was thinking. And of course, at this point in my life, I had begun to have a real relationship with God. And I can remember distinctly after that, it was as if God said to me, I want you to do what you just did right in that moment, but with the gospel.
Mhm.
Wow.
And this became a defining moment for me. And you know what's interesting about this is, for those of you who are familiar with the Bible, there's a man named Peter whom God also called to follow him. And Jesus said to him, come follow me, and I will make you a fisher of men. And, we often use that language. Hey, God wants to make you a fisher of men. But Peter was a fisherman. That's why it was significant for him.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until years later that I realized, God did actually that same thing with me.
Mhm.
I'm in a classroom, in my element,
Mm.
talking about algorithms and what the output of some algorithm is going to be. And God said to me, hey, you see what you just did, what you know, what you're familiar with, what you have experience with? I want you to take that and now use that
Mm.
for the gospel. And I think that's how God calls us so many times. He doesn't tell us something that's just so unrelatable or has no
Mm.
relation to our upbringing. It's as if he says to us, I've been preparing you your whole life
Mm.
for this moment. And so he
Yeah.
uses those things, how he's shaped us and wired us, and he uses that to call us into his purpose. And I really experienced that.
I love that so much. So for somebody who's young who's trying to figure out their purpose, what would you say like the things that they're naturally inclined to do? Would you encourage them to just pursue that to see if that's what God is calling them to do?
Yeah, great
Also,
question.
and also because I've heard or know people who were called to do things that they just weren't naturally inclined to
Sure.
do at all. So how do you decide what God is leading you to do, like with your
Great.
life?
Yeah, great question. Let me just say, too, people get really nervous about this
Mhm.
question,
Mm.
right? They feel like, man, if I mess this up, I'm going to ruin my whole life. And here's what I would encourage you with: take some of the pressure off. God is really good at getting us where he wants us to be. We're so afraid I'm going to choose the wrong career or I'm going to live in the wrong city.
Mm.
And people get so nervous about that, especially in the beginning stages of manhood, because purpose matters to us, right? We
Mhm.
want to do something that's significant. We feel like we're going to mess it up. And what I can encourage you with is if you'll actually put more attention on being the right person,
Mm.
Mm.
God will get you where he wants you to be. And, you know, he can use us wherever we are. And so put that attention on being the right person. That being said, you're right. God does it all kinds of ways.
Yeah.
I do think for many of us, we find themes in our lives that God wants to use later.
Mm.
You know, Paul the Apostle, again, he was an intense guy, right? Well, it took that intensity to put up with what he had to put up with to
Yeah.
continue preaching the gospel and planting churches, right? And he studied the scriptures his whole life. So it's not a surprise that then God used him to write scripture. So we see those themes. I love the example of Moses, right? God draws him out of the water. And then the next thing you know, Moses is leading people through water, right?
Mhm.
And so God uses these themes that are in our lives that can be significant. But you're right, Charles. You know, sometimes he just calls us to switch gears.
Yeah.
But even then, I find God doesn't waste what he puts inside of us. And so even my own story looks like a massive shift, right? You're studying math, you're studying physics, and now you're a pastor. And on paper, people think like, wow, all right, I guess you just left everything you knew behind. But that's not actually true. He used those things still in my life in the present. So, yeah, I think finding those themes, I think giving yourself some space to try some things
Mm.
when you're younger. Again, so many times we think, if I choose wrong now, I'm just stuck in this for life. But you're almost never stuck. You know, it's almost always the case that you can make some kind of shift or adjustment. So, you know, give yourself some space to try some things, to put your hands to it. And if you don't love it, if it feels like, man, God has something else for me, then you make a course correction.
Yeah. That's great. So you had a course correction in your life, or not a course correction, another change in direction.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that, from graduating and going into ministry?
Yeah. So there were a couple key moments that led to that. One was this one I described in this class. Another one was with people. And I think this is another significant way that God will lead us is the people he wants to pair us with in this life.
Mm.
You know, I met my wife in college. That
Mhm.
obviously was significant. But I also met the same church family that I'm a part of. I actually got to connect with them in college, and that was a significant part of my story. And so I can remember being at a meeting, and there was this guy speaking. And as he was speaking, I remember having this strong sense of, I think I could do ministry with this guy.
Mm-hmm.
I had never met him before. So the way we met was I went up to him after this meeting and said, I think maybe I'm supposed to do ministry with you. And
Had you ever thought about ministry before that moment?
yes, I had.
Okay.
And again, this experience that I had had in this classroom had come before that moment. So I didn't have any idea what that might look like. I didn't even know what the possible paths were. But in that moment of this guy, I thought, I think maybe I'm supposed to connect with this guy. Of course, it's always amazing how God works. This guy is now my brother-in-law. We ended up marrying sisters. So that couldn't have been predicted. I never would have guessed that would have happened. But on that day, it was, hey, I don't know you, but here's what I think. And so he said, well, let's get dinner, man. And that's a whole funny story. But we got dinner together, and that became a stepping stone into this path of what ministry might look like for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I went from majoring in math and physics and on to being a college minister. That was the next step for me.
Great. Well, a lot of people have no clue what a college minister, campus minister, whatever title. Do you just like sit around? Do you skateboard with people? Do you just just do Bible studies? What does a campus minister do? And how, were you any good at it? How was it?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, and I probably couldn't have even answered that my first couple of years of being a college minister. That was actually one of the hardest things for me because all my experience was school.
Mm-hmm.
And all the boundaries were clearly set for that, right? You go to the school, they give you the syllabus. Here's what you need to learn. Here's the test. Okay, great. Now all of a sudden it was, okay, meet people, help them become followers of Jesus, and train them to be great in their lives. Okay. So what are the steps, you know?
Yeah.
I can remember early on it hitting me, oh man, nothing even happens unless I plan it. I had to come up with everything. It was kind of a shock to the system, honestly. And I was really terrible at it for a long time. I mean, every component, I couldn't speak well. I didn't know how to mentor anybody. I didn't have any answers for the questions people were asking. It was just a train wreck. But you know what? Sometimes you just got to start.
Mhm.
Mm,
Sometimes you just got to take some steps, right? And if you do, you'll grow.
mm.
And, I heard somebody else say, adults learn on a need to know basis. Well, I needed to know then, right? I'm in it, I'm failing
Yeah.
and drowning. And so, yeah, it meant all kinds of things from raising a team of financial supporters to figuring out ways to meet and engage students on campus to hosting large group meetings, which at the beginning were not very large, to doing one-on-one mentoring, to helping people become leaders, to teaching people how to lead Bible studies, all kinds of aspects of growth and following Jesus is what a college minister does. And so, in some ways, it's like being a missionary and a pastor all at the same time.
Mm.
Great. And how long do you do that for? What's that experience like for you personally?
Yeah, I did that for 9 years. And as I mentioned, the first couple of years were challenging. I can remember on multiple times just asking God, why am I doing this? I'm so terrible at it. And I don't know about you guys, I like to win. I want to be
Yes.
successful with my
Yes.
life. And so not succeeding and knowing you're not succeeding is painful,
Yeah.
right? And so I had been really successful in school. And so I can remember having, asking God, like, I was great at that. Why am I not doing that? Why am I doing this thing? This is terrible. And, but eventually I learned, and I grew. And, what's so neat about that? One of the things I love about college ministry is there are so many aspects to it. And so, building the relationships with people, learning how to lead, studying. I got to do all those components, even things I wasn't good at, like making flyers and planning events and things like that. But so many opportunities for growth. And, what's really one of the most rewarding things in my life is so many people who were students in our college ministry who are real friends today.
Mhm.
The relationship started, I'm their college minister and they're a student, and now we're peers. So many people who went on and have gone on to do some really amazing things that I think, wow, God, I had the great privilege of being a part of their story.
Mhm.
Those things were a real blessing to me. And so, eventually over time, we got to impact a lot of people's lives.
Nice.
Was
So
there a s-
go ahead. Go
Sorry,
ahead.
was there a specific moment where you realized I'm getting better at this, or did you? Go
There
ahead.
actually is, because a lot of times in life it's not that way.
Mm,
It's always gradual. But I remember this specifically when it came to speaking.
mm,
So I really struggled in public speaking, which is unfortunate because that was a major part of my job. And I can remember the day when that changed.
Mm.
I can remember the message that I gave where I finally felt like, hey, I was actually able to communicate something clearly with conviction that felt like me. And, why did that moment happen exactly then? I don't know, but I think a lot of life is like that. When you're working on something, you work on it, you work on it, you work on it, and then one day you feel it shift.
mm,
Like, oh, I'm now doing this at a different level than I did before.
mm,
And I know people who do vocal training experience that sometimes. All of a sudden they realize, like, oh, there's a bigness to my voice that I couldn't produce in the past and now I can. Or,
mm.
an athlete, breaking through a certain level, whether it's strength or speed. It was like that for me, honestly, with speaking.
Mm. Very cool. So 9 years in campus ministry. What transition did that lead you into next? And what's that next phase of your life look like?
Yeah. So I ended up going back to graduate school for a PhD in mathematics. That's an interesting story, but it was all related in that I loved engaging the university community uh, with God's truth, and there's just a lot of ways to do that.
Mhm.
You can do that as a college minister, which I loved doing. I have the opportunity to do that now as a pastor that where I get to lead a church where there's all kinds of universities and colleges in our region. But another way to do that is from the inside as a professor or administrator. And I started to think about pursuing the option of being a professor and having an influence in the university community that way. And so still really loved mathematics. And so I decided to go back for a graduate degree. I actually had an opportunity to start that where I was at the time, which was at Florida State University, and ended up taking a master's degree there, and then went on to Rutgers University in New Jersey, where I did my PhD. The reason I went there is because they had a group in their mathematics department that specialized in mathematical physics, which was a real interest to me. And so I studied mathematics at Rutgers, and that was a new page.
Mm.
Yeah.
And now, Gabe, I know this just because we've talked. Like, people hear PhD, they're like, "Wow!" In math and physics, mathematical physics, that's way beyond me. But you were no scrub in the spectrum of people that get PhDs. So I just want to let you have a moment here to tell us how good you were at math.
Want you to flex.
You were good at this, and I want you to just tell everybody about it.
All right. Here's here's one concrete way maybe to measure it. To go to a good graduate program in mathematics, one of the things that's required is what's called the Math GRE. Now, this isn't confused with the regular GRE, which has a verbal and an analytical portion. This is different subjects, like chemistry has a GRE and physics has a GRE. And so graduate schools will have people take these tests because it helps them get some sort of way to compare students who've come from different schools. How do you compare GPAs from different schools? How do you just say, like, okay, your advisor says these great things about you, but is it really true? So it just gives some kind of concrete measure. And so the only people who take this test are people who are applying to mathematics graduate schools. That's the only reason you would ever take the test. So in a given year around the world, a couple of thousand people will take this test, right? So I took this test, and my results were in the 99th percentile.
Wow. That's my pastor right there. That's my pastor right there.
99.
Let's go. Come on. Humble brag. So, see, some people don't even know. They hear the PhD, they hear the doctor, and that's enough for them. But some people, they got to know that of those people, the 99th percentile.
Now, the sad part
Come
is,
on.
That's crazy.
Come on, Charles.
I've forgotten all that mathematics by now. So,
I'm sure
well, here we are, But I think that's something that, again, like having known you and getting to see, a lot of people, they'll see you on the other side of a camera or they'll hear you as a speaker, but your life, in my experience, has been characterized by a new level, just a very high level of excellence. And I think that's what most people know you for. You have a high level of personal integrity, and everything you do, you commit to and you do really, really well. And so where do you think that level of excellence comes from in your soul? And then what do you think it means to be a man of excellence?
good questions. Everybody is wired differently, and so all of us, I think, have things that we're more drawn to than other things. Like, for example, some people are just extremely creative, and they're just going to create no matter what area you put them in. They're going to create, right?
This guy.
Other people are competitors. It doesn't matter if they're playing, cards, or if they're running on a track or wrestling.
He's calling us out.
Yeah. Two examples right here.
They're gonna compete, right? If I'm gonna do it, then I'm gonna win, right? And some people are just very relational. They get in the moment, and it's just always going to be about the people for them. And so God puts different themes in our lives for different reasons. Thank God that there's a diversity, right? And so yeah, that's a long way to say I'm not sure what drove that, but it's what I can tell you, it's just always been in me. Like, I want to excel, and other people, they just, we've all met them, and that doesn't matter to them. And I want to say this in the right way, because they'll oftentimes have other strengths that are just so valuable. They're not concerned about if they're in this percentile or whatever. They would say more like, hey, how are my friendships doing? And how are my relationships? So, yeah, for me, my parents didn't push me. It wasn't that. Uh, they never pushed me in school. It was very clear that they loved me no matter what.
Mm.
So I'm not sure what that was. It's just something that's been, in me from the beginning that if I'm going to do it, I want to do it really well.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm gonna do it. I'm
And
gonna do it
so,
right.
just that one was hardwired.
Hey, use what you got, right? That's great.
And here's what's so great. What I really want men, I think, is so important because one of the challenges for us as men is we need to learn from other men,
Mhm.
Mhm.
but then we need to embrace being ourselves. And there's not a type of man that's better than another type of man. And this is
Mm.
so important because we get pictures in our heads of, oh, this is the one type of man, but that's just not true. We need all the varieties of men. I mean, I think about men who are great counselors. What would we do without those men?
Mhm.
I think about men who just work so hard, and thank God for those men. I think about the men again who are creative, who just are going to come up with something new. We need all those varieties, and if we'll be together and we'll build relationships with men like that, then together we can be great.
Mm.
I really don't think men on their own are ultimately going to be great. I think it takes the camaraderie of other men to really be great as a man.
Man, I think you just put your finger on something incredible. I mean,
Mm.
that's really the heart behind,
This.
yeah, this whole the Wild Way together. Pete's not here, but we all recognize that we're super different,
Mm.
but we can come together and do something greater. I love our small group. I love our brotherhood that we
It's
have.
all over the place.
Yeah,
So diverse.
just yeah. I mean, I think that we talked about that in our last episode of vulnerability. How like when we can be vulnerable with the right people, that creates intimacy,
Mm.
and those bonds of intimacy can forge into a deeper sense of purpose and of mission together.
Yes,
And so many men are not willing to go there because they're afraid.
yes. And this is where we can help each other, right?
Hmm.
Because when we see someone tempted to either reject who they are in an attempt to be someone else
Mm.
or feeling like it's not valuable, then we can affirm one another and call out that greatness. I truly believe that every man, and again, in the right context with other men, can be great.
Hmm.
Mm.
And we as men can call that out of each other. And, when we do that for one another, then we're a real gift to each other. And all of us can elevate.
Was there like a specific point in time where you realized that? And did you have seasons where you like weren't surrounded with a group of men, and how did you deal with those seasons?
Yeah, good question. This is the blessing of spiritual family. And this is something, honestly, that, the church that I have the great privilege of leading is a part of a larger family of churches. And it's something that larger spiritual family, and I love that terminology, spiritual family, because we can truly be brothers, is really excels at,
Mm.
is valuing the brotherhood,
Mm.
valuing speaking into one another's lives and calling out that greatness and creating spaces like you were alluding to a moment ago, Billy, of being able to be vulnerable. Boy, that helps. And so a lot of people feel alone in ministry or alone in life, and I didn't have that.
Mm.
I came into my calling and my purpose in the context of family and relationship. And I remember seeing other men that didn't have that, and it made all the difference in the world. Did I still have insecurities? Oh yeah. Did I still have a ton of areas that needed to grow? Absolutely. But boy, the safety net of that
Mm.
made such a huge difference. Now, that being said, I think we still all have to watch the temptation to isolate, to
Yeah.
pull back to, hey, I'm present, but I'm not really present.
Mhm.
So to this day, I still have to make the choices to, I'm in a small group too, right? I'm the pastor of the church. I'm in a small group and I have to make a decision. Am I going to be vulnerable to these guys? Or am I just going to be the pastor figure in the
Mm,
corner of this group? Those are decisions I have to make, right?
Mm.
And so all of us still have to make those decisions to be there, to be ourselves, to be vulnerable, to be brothers.
Yeah. So, who are some of those men then that called out what you were good at in your
Yeah,
life?
gosh, the the man who planted the church that I became a part of in college and did college ministry with, his name is Chip Bueller. Manly man. Um, Loved following that man, and was such a blessing. He he preached the scriptures, and he spoke things from God over my life at an early age. Another man, Ron Miller, who was a mentor to me, who became the pastor of that church after Chip Bueller moved to another city, was just really significant in affirming and speaking. My own father actually has been such an affirming voice in my whole life, and I know a lot of men don't have that,
Mhm.
and but I was very blessed to have that, and to this day he still serves in that way. And there's many other men beyond that, Ron Lewis, Jim LaFoon, and then great peer level friendships that are guys that I can just bear everything with. I don't have to hide anything. Who pray with me? Who I've wept with these men. Yeah, I'm blessed to have a lot of friendships.
Those are the most valuable friendships, right? The guys that we can bear everything to.
That's right.
We're having a somber moment right here because
I
that's
know,
such a
like,
powerful truth. And I think I
definitely.
really want people to get that. If we don't have that, build it. So if somebody is like listening and saying, "Man, Gabe, I want that so badly,"
Mm.
how do I go about building that band of brothers, this spiritual family, this camaraderie around what the purpose of God is for my life? How would someone do that?
Yeah, good question. I don't know if there's a magic bullet. I would say immediately just being like trying to cling to some other guy is usually awkward. Uh, so maybe don't do that. Um, you know, I'll always remember a friend telling this story where he wanted what you're describing. He said he wanted deeper companionship, and he started praying for it. Number
Mm.
one, and then he made a goal to say, "Hey, I'm going to build one friendship, and don't overload the friendship. Give it space to see where it goes. So just get to know somebody. You don't have to marry this person, quote unquote, right away, right? You
Mhm.
can,
Yeah.
because what you're looking for is a lot of things, but at some point you're looking for, hey, is this a trustworthy man? Is there a bit of a kindred spirit? And this doesn't mean the same temperament, doesn't mean the same gifts, doesn't mean the same
Yeah.
background, doesn't mean the same ethnicity, any of that. It just means, do I start to detect that same fire burning in his heart
Mm.
that burns in my heart? Could look different, all of that. But spend time. Spend time with the guys. Start to have some conversations. And if you'll be, because what I found is most guys actually don't pursue it.
Mhm.
They just feel sorry for themselves if they don't have it.
Mm.
Say it again.
Right? They think, man, I'm lonely. I wish I had friends like that. And
Mm.
well, call somebody up, right? Or reach out, spend some time with somebody. And, so I think pray for it, take some steps, just start to build any kind of friendship and give it some time. Most friendships, most relationships take a little time, but put an effort in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to ask about friendship and things like that?
No, no.
Cool. All right. So we got to your PhD. Now you are not a professor. So you
Right.
have another big transition back to ministry. So talk us through, what did that transition look like? How did you know? I mean, that's got to be a little bit frustrating at some
Yeah.
level, and like, okay, God, what's going on here?
Yeah.
So what does that look like for you to transition back into full-time ministry?
Yep. And I should say, even while I was in graduate school, I wrestled for a lot of years. we tell the story in a few minutes and it can seem nice and clean, but
Mhm.
sometimes honestly life is a little messy,
Mhm.
and that's okay. I think you know, so much is like that, right? Guys who try to start working out, they go to the gym a couple times and they don't go for a few weeks. You just got all these starts and stops. We just that's okay. That's
Mm.
all of us. All of us have done that in so many different things. And sometimes it even happens in big decisions like career. And so even when I was in graduate school, there was lots of wrestling back and forth. Do I really want to do this, professor thing, or do I want to be back in vocational ministry? So honestly, I was back and forth a bunch. And I thought I had pretty much decided on, okay, I'm going to stick with the professor route. And this was one of those times where I was praying and it was God speaking clearly. Now, most decisions I make in my life don't work that way. It would simplify a lot of things, I think, if it was always that way. Like, God, what should I do right now? Okay, great, I'll do it. A lot of times I got to use strategy, I got to think, I got to ask other people, work it out. That's most of my decisions are like that. But this was one time where I was in prayer and God just spoke pretty directly, take this church.
Mm.
And And so I said yes to that. And it was awkward telling my advisor, I'm going to be honest, after I'd put out all these applications for postdoctoral positions and such, and sort of, you're going to do what? You're going to be a pastor? What? Because literally, I graduated my PhD in May of 2011, and June 1st of 2011, I became the lead pastor of Freedom Church.
What?
That's
So it's
wild.
the most bizarre looking thing, right?
Wow.
On paper.
Logical career step, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah. Now, again, I will say, on the themes were all still there, right?
Mm.
It was
Mhm.
still, I know who God has made me to be. I know what the mission is. In some ways, it was just a shift of strategy,
Mhm.
almost more than in product. I still know I'm called to um, help people believe the gospel. I still believe I'm called to the university community. It's just how's that going to look? And God gave direction with that. So yeah, it was in some ways an abrupt shift, but it was also ultimately very smooth.
Yeah. I think we talk a lot about this is like many times our purpose is connected with serving, right? And so it's so easy to see, like you said, over the course of decades,
Yeah.
that hey, God has called me to serve this community, the university community, to help them see who God is, to connect those dots, and then so you're just following His leading and prompting per season.
Yeah, that's right. And again, there's so many other factors. I mean, I had people I could talk to,
Hmm.
right? There were people. I wasn't making all these decisions ultimately in a vacuum. I'm talking to my wife about it. I'm talking to trusted friends about it. So there's these safety nets, and what I often tell people is the crazier a decision is, the higher the stakes are. Like if it's something like, I believe I need to sell everything and move to Antarctica. All right, well, you better be a little more confident in that one before you make that shift, right?
Yeah.
If it's hey, I think maybe I'm supposed to start a Bible study. You know what? Go for it.
Yeah.
If it turns out you weren't supposed to
Try
do
it
that,
out.
probably not going to be a lot of harm,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, that's what I encourage people with. So this was a big decision, clearly.
Mm.
So I had people that I could talk with.
Okay. And we just kind of like skipped over the personal part, but you got married,
I did,
had a
yeah.
couple kids along the
A lot of
way.
kids.
So, what's that family life look like for you? And how does Jen, your wife, play into, is she ministering alongside of you?
Great
Were you
question.
guys dynamic duo, power couple? What's that look like?
Mm-hmm. Well, our first few years of college ministry, we were not power anything. We were, oh
You seem
Lord,
very
what
confident
is
about
happening?
this.
Oh boy, yeah. We started college ministry together, and
Mm.
and um, over the years, eventually there was a tipping point. Eventually, there were so many children, and they got to a certain age where Jennifer had to shift more toward putting more focus at home, but that was a
Mm.
gradual transition. So we definitely began college ministry together, and then of course when I went back to graduate school, that was a big shift. And all of those were big adjustments for Jennifer as well, because we were sharing this mission together, and there's a shared identity in that.
Mhm.
Obviously we're our own people, but there's shared identity. And so, um, here we're almost making a shift from, hey, we're college ministers, to, okay, now I'm a graduate student. That, even how you think about yourself changes with that. And we homeschooled our children. And by we, I mean Jennifer homeschooled our children.
It's a very generous we. Like, we are
Oh
pregnant.
boy, yeah, exactly. So yeah, there was so many things going on, and that's a major part of the story. Learning how to be a dad. I'm still learning how to be a dad. My oldest is now 21, and I'm learning how to be a dad. So it's a growth process, and I was not, even though I had a great dad. You assume sometimes that if you've had really good experiences, then you'll just be really good at something.
Yeah.
It's like, boy, I've seen a lot of tennis matches, so I'm probably going to be really great at tennis. But it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
And again, having a great dad is awesome, but it didn't automatically mean I was going to be really successful as a dad. So
Yeah.
a lot of growth in that, a lot of growth even up to the present. But yeah, there was a lot, going on through that. I mean, we had all kinds of things. We had different people living with us at different stages of our lives, and so yeah, there's a lot of seasons in life, and everything touches everything else. And so I can remember when I first got married, a man told me, he said, "You're going to go through 7 marriages in your life." And he didn't mean you're going to be married to 7 different women. It just meant the seasons of life are going to continue to change, and that's going to change your marriage. And so, who I am as a father has shifted over the years. Who I am as a husband has shifted over the years. How I minister has shifted over the years, and these are for good reasons and natural reasons, but they're shifts that we make, and things that people said that in my 20s I would maybe roll my eyes at and think like, all right. Now today I realize, oh, there was a lot of wisdom in that. Or now I understand because I'm in a different stage of life. I was quick to be critical of other people in so many different ways. And now, after going through more life, you hopefully have a little more grace for people because you've experienced some more and you realize, hey, there are some real challenges in this life. So all that shifts and changes us.
If you could give your younger dad self one word of advice, and your younger husband self, I know this makes no sense grammatically, what would that be?
It's the same actually for a lot of areas in my life. Probably every area in my life. And it's very simply stated: love more. The longer I am in everything I do, the more I realize it's all about love. Now, I'm a math guy, right? I did, it's as abstract as you can get. I'm studying equations. I'm trying to prove theorems. I love logic. I love rationality. But it's all about love. And we can get concerned with being right, succeeding, winning, having a certain status. And hey, that's fine. That's fine. But I would have put a lot more attention on loving really well, whether my children, my wife, the people I got to work with, loving really well.
That's a great answer.
That is.
Yeah. I think I remember reading that somewhere. If I have a math degree,
Jesus might have said
a big family,
where
but don't
was
have
that,
love. Oh, man. Well, now, a lot of the context that we know you in is under your leadership. So you took over Freedom Church in June 1st, 2011. Was it about roughly 100 people?
We were getting close to 100 people. I think around those days we were averaging, maybe 90, 95 on a Sunday.
And so now we have close to 1,000, right?
Yeah, who knows in COVID, right? I mean, the 3 of us are still there, so we know there's at least 3.
Yeah, right.
But after that, it's hard to know, right? I don't know what
Pre-COVID, around 1,000.
Yeah.
Okay. That's 10x, right? That's a big jump. And so, over the years as you grew as a leader
Mm.
or as the organization that you led, the church, grew, how did you have to grow personally as a leader?
Yeah. Boy, all kinds of ways. And I'm sure there are plenty I'm not even aware of. But a major thing is you got to be good with teams
Mhm.
Mm.
because you can't do everything yourself. And in fact, I think this is what keeps a lot of organizations, including churches, but others small, is if you decide everything has to happen through me and by me.
Mm.
That is a guarantee to live a small life and lead small organizations. So you've got to learn to work with teams. And so a lot comes into that with leadership, right? Because you have to learn to recognize strengths in other people and help them call out the greatness in them,
Mm.
help get them aligned with the things that they can do and should be doing, and then trust them to do it. um, Putting attention on what only you can do and letting other people do other things. And, for different leaders, some people might find that comes very naturally. Other people could have challenges with that for lots of reasons. A sense of, I'm giving up control.
Mhm.
That could be one.
Mm.
Um, it could be, yeah, I mean, just a lot of different reasons we might not let go and trust other people to do it. And so, I think that's really important. Some people feel guilty that they're not doing everything anymore, but you realize like I've got to add value where I can add the most value. So I think learning to lead and work with teams is really important. Yeah, I think that's one of the most significant to really be able to scale. Again, a lot of other, components to leadership, but I think that's a really big one.
Yeah. Okay, so we've been through COVID. Um,
Wait, hold on before you move on.
yeah, yeah, okay.
So you talked about leadership, the difference between how the church was when it first started and how it is now. What did it physically look like? Like the buildings, because now well, at least we were at the Prince Theater, this beautiful theater having church. What was the location?
Yeah, so funny. When I became the lead pastor, we were meeting in a movie theater,
Mm.
and wasn't the nicest movie theater ever. Like if you stood in one place for too long, your feet would stick to the floor. You'd feel them peeling
Oh my
off. I can remember previews coming on in the middle of my sermons. I can
What?
remember, lights flickering. So we're trying to have children, a program for children in the theater, and they're flickering like it's a haunted house. Like, "Mommy, don't leave me here." Sort of moment. We didn't have good signage. I mean, it felt like you had to, come to the back door and give the secret knock to get let in. And so, those things do matter.
Yes.
Facilities do matter. I wish we could say like, oh, it doesn't, but it does. It does make a difference, at least for people when they're first getting involved. And you know, a lot of there's a to do with critical mass.
Mm.
Like if someone walks into a room, and again, we have different expectations for all kinds of different things. But if you're walking in and you're going to a church service, and you walk in the room, and there are say 40 people there, what happens in your mind is you say, "Oh, this isn't a real church yet." And so most people are going to stick through because they want to be a part of something that's already more established and feels like, oh, they've already figured it out, or maybe they don't know what they're doing, and that's why there are very few people here.
Mm.
And so getting to a critical mass really helps. But yeah, we were figuring it all out then. We had volunteers who would um, we were small enough would bring food for people to eat ahead of time, and you didn't have to have a massive amount because there weren't large numbers of people coming.
Yeah.
But we would have very regularly homeless people come and just clear us out. They would it's like, all right, this is all my food for the rest of the day, and so they would load up like multiple plates like up their arm like a server, and it's like, well, I guess none of the rest of our guests are getting anything today. So there
Should
were
have came earlier.
yeah, so many things to navigate in those early days.
Yeah. Did you have like strategies to grow the church, or was it just let's just believe God for more people to come, or was there things that you did like marketing wise, or I don't know?
Yeah, good question. There were actually a couple of specifically with marketing that were really helpful. We redid our website,
Mm.
which is, you would think, a no-brainer, but that's the front door for people. And so if people come to your website and they can't navigate, or it just looks like it was built before websites were a thing,
Yeah.
then that's going to be a problem. People aren't ever going to come. We also, you know, we were buried with people who are ever going to search for for a church. We were never going to show up. And so people have to know you exist
Mm.
to, you know, to, check you out. And then just where we were, I knew we wanted to reach college students, and where we were located was, college students, it was going to be difficult for them to get there. So a change of location ended up being very significant for us. And then I, you know, everything ultimately rises and falls on leadership. So getting some other key leaders that got involved just makes a big difference too, because those become real anchors for people. So there's a lot of different factors
Mm.
that come to growing an organization, but those are some of them.
All right. So before I was rudely interrupted,
I'm gonna let you finish, but
in a minute. um, so yeah, leadership comes with a ton of pressure, and I'm imagining 100 to 1,000, a lot more pressure, and now we have COVID, we
Mm.
have racial tension, and we have an election year. So how have you personally, as a leader, kept that peace in your soul to lead through and just manage your own soul during this time?
Yeah, now that you mention all that, I think I'm actually going to quit.
We heard it here first.
Um, it's a lot. It really is a lot. This has been a challenging year for all of us, and I know it's been challenging for a lot of pastors. I'm sure a lot of small business owners and many others. Um, it's been a very, very challenging season. This is again where I think relationships are really, really important. So, the some things that have been key for me, just at different levels. So, relationships, people I can talk to and say, here is what's really happening. Please pray with me, pray for me. That's been huge. At a very natural level, getting sleep at night and continuing to exercise. I know those sound non spiritual, but we're whole beings, right? God has made us so that our souls inhabit a physical body and they impact one another.
Mm.
And so um, we need to pay attention to that. And so getting enough sleep and again exercising, those things really help. My wife Jennifer and I, our relationship, we spent a lot of time in prayer when we first were getting, were engaged and the beginning of our marriage. And then life, lots of things happen in life. Well, these last few months, that's just been another area where we've had to double down, and literally every day for, I don't know, 20 to 30 minutes, we spend time together in prayer. It's part of all our schedules are different now, so that we couldn't do that very easily in the past in that same way, but we could do that now. So we've had to take advantage of that. And then, forcing myself to step back and try to get perspective, because there can be so many discouraging moments. It's almost like you have to do what you just did when you introduced that question, which is say, like, hey, remember, there is a pandemic going on.
Mhm.
Hey, there is a lot of polarization in our nation going on. Hey, there's a lot of past pain and hurt that's built up to this moment. Let's keep that in mind so that I can maybe have a little bit better expectations for the moment and not feel crazy for having a down day
Mm.
or feeling unmotivated in a certain day. I think that has helped too. But yeah, it's been a challenging season. We're all figuring out, but those have been a few things that I think have helped in the middle of a crazy 2020.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, not many people, or some pastors haven't handled it as well. And one that's been in the news recently is Pastor Carl Lentz with Hillsong New York had a moral failure over the COVID season, and unfortunately, he's not the first guy. So I just kind of wanted to see, like, what is your perspective on how can men in general make it for the long haul, and then especially men in leadership and in pastoral ministry?
Yeah. It's interesting. When I was starting out in everything, starting out as a man, starting out as a husband, starting out as a minister, I would hear older men say things like, I just want to finish well.
Mhm.
And and I remember thinking, oh, well, that's a low goal. Like, come on, like seriously, like, is it really that hard to just stay faithful to your wife? And I didn't fully get it. And I think a lot of that was I didn't carry the sort of pressures and weight. I hadn't lived the sort of life that these men had lived yet. They were speaking from a different place.
Mhm.
And I thought had as much pressure and challenges as anybody in that stage of life because we all do. And, it was new for me at that moment. And now you just realize, ooh, wow, there's a lot more riding on this. And so I think in particular, people who become very public figures, you see this with political officials, you see this, yes, with pastors, you see this with entertainers and others, professional athletes. Um, you have to really make some decisions about how you're going to navigate that. Um, if you are not careful and you let in your mind, you imbibe, you drink in too much of that. See, people will try to worship you,
Mm.
um, and and I'm not saying that as one that even experiences that very much, but when you look at these mega stars and
Mm.
such, um, people will attempt to put you in this place, and that's it can be like a drug. At first,
Mhm.
it's like, man, this feels so awesome because, again, so many men want to be successful, and that sure feels like success.
Mhm.
I've got all these people worshiping me, but we were not meant to be worshiped. And that will damage your soul and put a weight on it that can drive you into some bad places. And you start to feel different than everybody else. And so you can start to excuse certain behaviors in your mind, or you can feel so trapped because now your life is public. You can feel so trapped, I don't know any way out of this. And so you just end up making a really bad decision because of that. So I think a lot of different things can lead to that. Um, your relationship with your spouse, you know, for most people, it's a drift,
Mhm.
right? It doesn't happen in one day or 1 week or 1 year. It's a drifting of closeness. This, being elevated and dealing with that sort of pressure and expectation. Um, Again, sometimes people can be overnight successes, but for most people, that builds up. And so I think we need to have some reminders of, hey, you know, you're not that big of a deal. Like God
Yeah.
will be just fine without you in that position. And remembering that
Mm.
regularly, it does not all ride on you. The universe is not, on your shoulders right now. And um, and then I think we have to choose. We got to choose where we're going to be a hero. Am I going to be a hero to 1,000 people who don't know me, or am I going to be a hero at home? And um, again, that's something I have to continue to challenge myself with. And so, yeah, I think real friendships, people who really know you, making decisions about how are you going to view yourself? Do you think you're super important? Do you think this church or this organization or the world couldn't go on without you? No. Um, hey, do you need to take what kind of pace are you going at in your life? Is it sustainable? Do you have any practices in your life that build closeness with your spouse? I think there's just a lot of different things that can come together to help someone persevere over the long haul.
Just
I
thinking.
love I love what you just said. I'm just choose where you're going to be a hero.
That
That
was
is
great. Yeah.
really, really good.
That sounds like an episode of for another title for another episode.
Thank you.
Yeah. They write themselves. So that's great. Yeah, choose where you want to be the hero. I've heard this concept of access to excess being corrupting. Like when you have access to a lot of, whether it's success or eyeballs or money, then that has a way of corrupting your character if there was a seed of it. So,
Yeah, true. And again, if you don't have anybody, if you don't have those friendships in your life that you're just the regular guy, you're
Mm,
just, you without any titles or any platform or any notoriety, and or just some place where you can be known and understood, and the pressure can just, I think a lot of guys, they end up feeling alone.
mhm,
And that's a dangerous place to be. Someplace where you can really be known and say, hey, you know, almost every problem I see in men's lives comes down to pain. So it'll express itself as anger or some disastrous moral decision or 100 other things. But deep down, it's pain. It's, I don't know how to do with this and it's crushing me, or I don't really feel known or loved. Men mask pain 100 different ways, and we've got to learn how to process pain, how to deal with that. And it takes friends who can really be known to get that out in the open. So I just think that's really important.
Dude, so true.
really good.
Man, I'm just processing it. So sorry. The profundity
Mm,
getting to me. Okay, so one more leadership question for you. When you're looking at somebody and you're looking at a young guy, young girl, and you say they've got potential, what qualities are you looking for in them that signal to you this can be a great leader? This person.
Yeah. You know what's interesting about this is uh, there are so many different types of leader. So it's not like, oh, the person's really outgoing
Mm-hmm.
or the person has this narrow skill set. There's something deeper than that. Uh, I heard one person, so this is not original with me. This came out of a study that one of the most significant things for successful leaders is self awareness. And when there's that self awareness, which can tend to lead to security, because look, every leader only brings certain skills to the table. This is why you always got to have other people around you, right? Maybe you're the really outgoing person. All right, great. But are you also the strategist? Are you also the architect of the system? Are you also the creative? Are you also no leader is all the things. But the person who is truly self-aware and secure can then be a leader because he's then going to be able to build a team. He's going to be able to go with other people. He's going to be able to be comfortable in his own skin and walk with other people. And so a leader can be an introvert or an extrovert. A leader can be anything on the Myers-Briggs or anything on the Enneagram. It's really true. Now, some
yeah.
people might naturally gravitate to that more, but any of those personalities can end up being a leader. So I am looking for, but that being said, that self-awareness, that security, ability to communicate with other people. You just can't lead if you can't communicate. And I don't mean you have to get up on a stage and give a TED talk.
Mm,
I mean, can you interact with other people in a way that other people can connect with you? Uh, I often am looking for people who can get along with a wide variety of people. Maybe that's because of the settings I tend to lead in is there's a diversity of people. So if you can only talk to people that get you, if people have to be able to bend to you to be able to connect and communicate with you, that's a problem.
mm,
If you can engage a wide variety of people, um, then I think there's a lot of promise there. And so I think over the years, I probably would have broadened my category. Now, I think there are a lot of things that and skill sets and that every leader needs to build, but I think there's a wide variety of raw material that can become, a person can become a leader. I love people who, for me personally, who are motivated though to accomplish something.
mm,
If I have to motivate you, uh, then that's going to be much harder.
Mhm.
I want people who are going to take some initiative, who want to accomplish something with their lives. Because if you have that, if you're self-aware and you want to do something with your life, boy, there's a lot of places you can go.
Great.
Mm. So be self-aware. You want to be a leader, be self-aware. Learn how to work with a bunch of I don't I didn't want to word it that way. Different personalities.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what else was it? It just
Take
left
some
my mind.
initiative.
Take some initiative. Yeah, I love that.
I like that not making people bend to you, but meeting people
Yeah.
where they're at. I see so many people hung up on that, like, oh no, this is just my personality. I'm like, no, you're a jerk, right? Like you're a loser. Like just get outside of your own head. People, if you're gonna make
Mm,
people bend to you, you're gonna live a really sad and lonely life.
That's
mm,
right.
I think just we live in such a self-absorbed, and it's becoming more and more self-absorbed culture that, man, people are starving to be around people that will meet them where they're at.
And this is a great distinction because self-aware is very different than self-absorbed,
Yeah.
right?
yeah.
Self-aware is, hey, I understand who I am. I understand what other people are like. I can see my strengths and weaknesses. And like the Apostle Paul says, I can think of myself soberly.
Mhm.
Mm,
I'm not falsely humble. I don't have too low a view of myself. I don't have too high a view of myself. I just have a sober view of myself. Hey, God's made me this. I've got some strengths. I got some weaknesses. I'm working on this. That's self-awareness.
mm.
Self-absorbed is, boy, it's all about me, and
Mhm.
you kind of turn the world off. And
Dude, we live in a self-absorbed world.
yes,
Culture.
Yeah. All right, so we got some random questions, and then
sure.
we're gonna ask you our wild way question. So one that wasn't
Yes.
on the list is, what are 3 to 5 books that every Christian should read?
Ooh,
Hmm.
uh, I really like Tim Keller a lot.
Mhm.
So The Prodigal God is a great one. Um, the Reason for God is really great. It's interesting for me, just thinking about the books that had some of the biggest impact in my life. Um, when I read the first time I read through a systematic theology that clarified some thinking for me. Um, there's a book by Jack Deere called Surprised by the Power of the Spirit that was very
Yes.
significant for me.
Awesome.
Um, there have been, at a key leadership stage for me, John Maxwell, some of his books like the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership was really significant. Good to Great, another leadership book that was really significant for me. This is a hard question for me, Billy.
I know. And
I
then-
like to
Just read
learn.
down the
I wasn't ready to get all the way
Libraries of
down
books,
to a list of
yeah.
3 to 5.
But just thinking of somebody who's saying like, hey, I want to nail the basics. I want to crush it at the fundamentals. So I think you've got a great list there, and we'll put links to those in the description below.
Mm.
So if you want to check out those books, go ahead, check out those links below. Any other books you want to add to that?
Yeah, off the top of my head, I'm sure I'm forgetting plenty of great ones, but I can give them to you later.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good. Okay. So as a pastor, a lot of people ask you questions.
Hmm.
What is one question you wish that people asked you?
Hmm. Generally speaking, and I don't know if I would say this even just as a pastor, but I wish more people would ask me, why should I follow Jesus?
Mm,
Because I find Jesus to be, he's the ultimate man. He's the ultimate leader. Uh, I just love to talk about how compelling of a figure Jesus is. And so I wish more people were curious
mm.
to know more about Jesus. Um, yeah. And then, generally speaking, I just, I love to, I love talking about what I'm learning. So when people ask me about, what I'm learning, what I'm thinking about, that's always fun
Learners unite.
What's something you wish people would stop asking you?
Who did you vote for?
Oh, boy. Yeah, exactly.
Jeez.
I did actually. Someone called me up a couple of days before the election, literally with that question. I hadn't spoken to this person in over a year.
Oh God.
Hey, so I was just calling up. Who should I vote for? Yeah, I roll.
I can't help
roll.
you.
I didn't tell him.
So what was your question, Charles?
That was it.
Okay, there we go. Question answered. No more politics. Okay, now what is one thing you wish people knew about pastors?
Ooh. Well, Yeah, I mean, some of these are the obvious, like, you know, pastors are human beings, right?
Mm,
Uh, like when you're a kid, if you ever saw one of your teachers outside of the school
yes.
setting, it was
Yeah.
so,
Jarring.
you were like, what is happening right now? Like you exist outside of the school. And so, again, it's hard to not have really high expectations
Mm,
for someone in that role. You just think like, boy, you know, uh, it's like you want this person to be great at everything, right? A prayer warrior and super generous and just a direct line with the Holy Spirit at any moment of every day of the day, and a miracle worker and an amazing communicator and a great counselor and super knowledgeable and a futurist and a great strategist and
everything.
great team leader. You realize like it's very easy to put all of that on a person
Mm,
even if you don't realize it's happening. Um, or you pick your favorite subset of those, the subset that really matters to you, and you want to project that on that person. And so I think it might be something along the lines of like, hey, people in the scripture were regular people, pastors are regular people, and so embrace them for who they are and how God has wired them. Let them be great in their strengths, and uh, and pray for their weaknesses.
all right, we're down to our final question. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Bring it.
This is our wild question. How did you know when you became a man?
Ooh, yeah. Probably a lot of answers could be given to this, but one that was really significant for me. I don't know if I would exactly equate it with manhood, but it was such a major moment for me was um, the first time my parents came and heard me deliver a sermon at a church.
Mm,
Because here I now was walking in this calling that God had for me uh, as an adult on my, you know, doing what God had made me to do, and my parents getting to be in a setting to watch that happen and watch other people respond
mm,
to that moment and seeing the dynamic in the room. And then, um, as I mentioned earlier, I have great parents. The way they just sort of beamed after that moment, and I saw them almost have like a revelation of, oh, our son is really called to do this. Them getting that, me seeing them get that,
Mm.
and then affirm that was such a moment of I'm walking as an adult, as a man, in what God has called me to do. And the people who reared me and brought me up, I've now had a chance to see that, in a sense, affirm that. It was just a major moment of, oh, I'm not just, the boy who grew up in their home that they gave so much to raise. I got to see it in their eyes, their recognition of our son has become this man with this calling, doing this, and that was a major moment for me.
How old were you then?
Early 20s. I can't remember the exact age, but early 20s.
mm.
Man, that's pretty profound.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Pastor Gabe, if people want to connect with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, great. I wish I could say I were active on social media,
You have an
but
Instagram.
I'm
You
shocking.
do have an
The
Instagram.
accounts exist.
They're there.
And I
Yeah.
think I posted a picture in like 2012. When was Instagram invented?
I don't know.
Around it.
Yeah, obviously, the things I'm doing, our church website, wearefreedomchurch.org. You can get links to a lot of stuff there and make contacts there. And then our church YouTube channel as well has a lot of that.
And you have some exciting news, right? There's going to be one more way to connect with you. Do you want to tease us with it?
Yeah, I'm really excited about a YouTube channel about
Let's
apologetics
go!
that we're going to be working on rolling out over the coming weeks.
Apologetics with Dr. Gabriel Bouch.
I don't
Pretty
think we're
excited.
ready. We're not ready.
Oh man, we've had so many great conversations about like these little esoteric, nuanced details, and I can't wait for you just to go in, just on the broad sweeping strokes of like why this, why that, and then these very specific things. Man, I literally like put my hands up, like yes, this is gonna be so awesome when
I
you
think
said
there's
it.
an audience of like 4 or 5 people.
I'm gonna be
waiting
one of them for
that.
sure. Yeah, I'm gonna come to you. Hey, at minute 37:55, I have a
What
question
did that
about this.
mean?
Yeah. Hey, where is this? Like, what book did you get this from?
Good.
Pastor Gabe, we just want to say huge thank you. Thank you so much for this
Thank
time.
you.
Thanks for sitting down with us. Man, so many things to reflect on. So many long pauses between questions because we're just sitting here stunned. Like, man, we got to go back and think about these things. We'll be talking about these things. And so really excited just for the time we've had together and how God's going to continue to use you to, grow it from 1,000 Freedom Church to 1,000 to 10,000
10,000.
to
Let's go.
100,000 to, maybe the whole city will be at Freedom Church one day.
But my pleasure, guys. Thanks for doing this.
Charles, why don't you end us out, man?
Yo, you know what we say.
Go be wild.
Thank you for watching this episode of the Wild Way podcast. If you enjoyed it, give us a like, subscribe, comment below, or share with a friend. Thanks, guys.